Now that brings us to this point. How does China's checkbook diplomacy compare with India's diplomacy in Asia and Africa? China has expanded its reach across the world in search of influence, in search of new markets, and to keep its domestic economy in good health. Sample this. In the last few years, in less than 2 decades, China has expanded its influence from Gwadar port in Pakistan to Hambantota in Sri Lanka, to Kyayupyu port in Myanmar, to Chittagong port in Bangladesh, Fujairah in the UAE, and Djibouti in the Horn of Africa. This is all around India, an attempt to completely dominate the Indian Ocean region and the economic gains that come with it. In fact, China-Africa trade reached $220 billion in 2014, and since then that figure has only gone up. Compare that to India's, less than $60 billion till 2017. That's less than 1/4 of China's. Many African countries have run large trade deficits with China. Beijing is forgiving debts of those countries, and influence, of course, matters for China more than the recovery of debt, and that's the policy they're following. The growing influence of China is was evident at the Africa Summit last year. About 53 African countries took part in this summit. At the summit, Xi Jinping promised to give $60 billion in additional aid to Africa. They've already invested or disbursed another $60 billion in this region since 2015. India is reacting to all of this, although at a very slow pace, because Africa is crucial for India's economic growth engine. Be it energy, economic cooperation, or maritime security, it's time for New Delhi to react and to catch up. The use of traditional soft power will not stand the test of China's might. Here it is crucial to note that Beijing may also be harboring more than just economic interests. 2 years ago, China dropped its policy of zero military engagement. They opened their first overseas military base in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa. China is unlikely to go easy on its quest for influence in this region. In the African continent, it is already the largest aid provider and creditor to the continent. It holds 14% of Africa's sovereign debt. And if the African countries fail to repay the debt, China will use the debt diplomacy that it used in Hambantota and Sri Lanka. It will seek control of all these ports. Nearly 1 crore Chinese workers are already stationed in Africa. India, on the other hand, has traditionally had great relations with Africa, but in the last decade, it has lost out on economic projects to China. The total trade between India and Africa, as I said, stands at below $60 billion, less than 1/4 of what China has. So what should India do? What can India do? It must work with allies like Japan and invest in Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, the AAGC. Such programs could help India reach out to the region. China was already alarmed when India showed interest in this growth corridor. China wants India to merge these projects with schemes overseen by the BRICS bloc. Japan is not a part of BRICS. China wants to keep Tokyo out. But it's not all smooth sailing for Beijing in Africa. There is discontent against China. African laborers are exploited. They're paid less. Besides, Beijing is also allegedly influencing politics in the region. In Indian Ocean, in Africa, you name the region, there is a battle for influence between India and China. There are some promising green shoots for India's engagement in Africa as well. Last year, Prime Minister Modi said that India and Seychelles will work together to develop a naval base in the Assumption Island. India announced a $100 million line of credit to Seychelles. Seychelles can use this money to buy defense equipment from India. This is India's answer to China's military port in Djibouti. The appointment of former Army Chief Dalbir Singh as the next High Commissioner of Seychelles is a welcome sign, and it's no coincidence. It's a step in that direction to secure India's strategic interests in Africa. It is in response to China's growing presence in the Indian Ocean region, because it's important to remember that Indian Ocean is a crucial battleground. Whoever attains maritime supremacy in the Indian Ocean region becomes the dominant player in Asia. Unlike China's attempts to buy out influence with money, India needs to gradually improve its credit line, build influence through development projects. General Dalbir Singh has a big task on his hands.